Welcome to EDTE 580, Educational Psychology. This is a just-in-time video for the Common Core Literacy Standards for the Performance/Authentic Assessment assignment. As a recap, for your Performance/Authentic Assessment, you're creating a formal summative assessment in your content area that hopefully you can use or will use in your classroom. There's a detailed handout posted in Canvas. You can post questions on the discussion board. You can email the instructor if you have questions. There are also examples provided in the folder in Canvas, and there is also early feedback available, as always, for major assignments. As a recap, for your Performance/Authentic Assessment is going to be based in standards. First, you're going to base it in your content standard. If your content area doesn't have state standards in California, you can reference or refer to national or industry standards. As also required by the assessment, you need to incorporate some Common Core literacy standard. And that's the purpose of this video, is to provide a just-in-time explanation of those standards and how they can relate to your content area, especially if you're not an English teacher or a language arts teacher. Here's a brief history of the Common Core standards. First, it's important to note that there are no and never were any quote-unquote national education standards. Because of the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, any right or power not delineated in the Constitution is automatically granted to the states. The Constitution has no mention of education or education standards, so therefore states get to decide what standards they use. So again, there are no quote-unquote national standards. However, throughout history, there have been calls for common standards to be used across states, specifically a common core of standards in key subjects such as math and English. So in 2010, about 40 states adopted the Common Core standards. Note that these were not imposed on states by the federal government. States adopted them. You can visit this website, link will be in the comments below or in the description, to see which states adopted them. The link goes to this Wikipedia page, which gets updated based on how states differ in their adoption of the literacy and math standards. And you can look at specifically the map, delineates which states have adopted the standards, states that have partially adopted the standards, states that have adopted but later repealed the standards, and states that never adopted the standards. And then you can scroll to the different states and review how they use or modified or don't use those standards. You can also read about the Common Core standards on the Common Core Standards website. Again, the link will be posted in the description below. That link includes a link to this video by the Council of Great Cities that gives a quick 3-minute video explanation of the Common Core standards in general. The Common Core standards include math and English or literacy. Literacy also includes literacy in content areas, or also known as technical subjects. You can look at this online description of the Common Core standards, but important to note, this link does change frequently based on the states that adopt and modify and use the standards. And on this particular day, you can see the disclaimer that it says that you can find the Common Core standards in mathematics and language arts, and that the standards are temporarily located on this page as they address technical issues. So be aware if you come to this specific link that the link may be broken and you might have to do a Google search, but you can always look up Common Core state standards or the Council of Chief State School Officers. Finally, California is one of the 40 states that did adopt the Common Core standards in both math and in English language arts. You can access the Common Core standards by clicking on the link here or in the comments below. These standards are still in place with minor modifications. This website by the California Department of Education explains the Common Core standards and provides links to those standards. We will take a deeper dive into those standards in a moment. As indicated in the course and in the assignment description, Literacy is in every subject and every content area. And sometimes it's difficult to envision how literacy does play out in every content area. So I'm going to show some examples here in a moment. It's also important to note, moving forward for the Cal TPA, if that is the assessment you need to complete to earn your credential, you will have to eventually demonstrate literacy knowledge in your content area and have your students do that as well. Also, for those in the single subject credential program at Chico State, you specifically take a course, EDTE 632 Content Area Literacy, that expands on these topics and skills in pedagogy. So again, literacy is not just an English language arts topic, and it's not just reading and writing. It also involves listening and speaking, as we'll see in a moment. Here is an example from music. Being able to read music is a form of literacy in music. Can you read the clefs, notes, chords, and tabs? Are you able to understand the tempo and dynamics? Can you tell which line to sing in this text and in which order? Are you able to tell the notation? Also, we can see literacy in physical education and in sports. For example, is this play on the screen offense or defense? Do you even know which sport this particular play is for? Do you know what these positions are in the middle of the screen? What does W, M, and S stand for? Do you understand the routes and coverage for these players? Also, we can see literacy in areas that involve chemicals, such as all these symbols. Do you know which of these symbols is corrosive, flammable, explosive, radioactive, biological? And are you able to read the quadrants on these types of symbols that you see everywhere? We also see literacy in agricultural education in technical subjects, such as being able to read a beef chart, or being able to read a welding plan and knowing how to execute it, knowing how to read medicines for animals, being able to read and use a blueprint to build a birdhouse, or even to read and write a custom order in floral design. These are all examples of literacy. We also see literacy in the arts. For example, if your students are using Photoshop, do they know what all those symbols mean in Photoshop and how to use them? Do they know what these different symbols mean? Like, what does it mean to score and how to do it? What is slip, how to stick, and how to smooth? Do they know how to read and use a color wheel to find complementary colors, to find hues and tints, or to create them? Do they know the names and how to read and use different types of paintbrushes? We can also see it in family and consumer economics and finances. Are your students able to read a nutritional facts label? Do they know how many servings there are in a container? Can they read and differentiate between a routing number and an account number? Can you? How about filling out a 1040 tax form? Or even understanding an emergency alert system that you hear on the radio or TV? Do they know what to do if they hear that emergency system go off, whether it's a test or not a test? Common Core literacy standards apply to all content areas. There are both traditional literacy standards, but there's also literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. And as you can see on the screen here, for the purpose of this assignment, technical subjects includes every subject beyond English and language arts. So that includes math, technology ed, agriculture, music, art, physical education, home economics, finance, business, and more. When we look at these standards in just a second, we'll see that there are career and college readiness standards, and we'll also see that there are reading, speaking, writing, and listening standards. You can access the California Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts and Literacy in History, Social Studies, Science, and Technical Subjects at this website, and it is a PDF that you can download and save. When you scroll, you'll see the document's about 100 pages, which is a lot. So here's a quick tip and overview of what pages you will need to use for technical subjects. If we scroll down through the introduction down to the table of contents, we can see that there are traditional English language standards for K-5, and we also see regular standards for English language arts from grades 6 through 12. And here includes college and career readiness standards for reading and for writing and for speaking and for listening, for language use. If you want to use that in your technical standard, you may. For example, speaking and listening might be a part of the standards you wish to assess. However, there's also this section here that says standards for literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects grades 6 through 12. And we can see that they relate to reading and they also speak to writing. But as mentioned, you can also use listening and speaking from the regular standards if you wish, if they're applicable. You can see that these are on pages 8 through 85 primarily, so I'm going to scroll down to that section. On page 85, we have the introduction to the technical standards for literacy, or literacy standards for technical areas. There's an overview that you can read through on your own time, but we can start to see on page 81 the actual reading standards for literacy in history and social studies. Notice that's differentiated from other technical studies or subjects. We can see they continue on the next page. Then we can also see the reading, literacy, and science and technical subjects on page 83. And then just scrolling down for a more macro view, we can also see writing standards in those areas as well, starting on page 86. If I scroll back up to page 81, where the reading standards are for history, we can see the layout of a table, and this table is similarly formatted for all areas. We can see the different grades, so middle school grades or junior high grades, 9th through 10th grade students, and then 11th through 12th grade students. And we can see that the reading standards are broken down into key ideas and details and craft and structures. And then in the tables, we can see the specific standard for that grade level for that topic. And they're very similar, they just get a little bit more complex as students get older and develop more. Here's a key standard that actually exists in many of technical subjects, is determining the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in text. So I'm going to scroll down now to the technical areas and show that the format is similar, key ideas and details, and craft and structure. And for many technical subjects, determining the meaning of key symbols, terms, and other domain-specific words is something that students need to be able to do, to read music, to read a blueprint, to read a nutrition label, to read a floral plan. All of those things include symbols and key terms that need to be used in the relevant topics for grades 6 through 8, 9 through 10th, or 11 through 12. Scrolling down, we can also see integration of ideas, so that could include translating quantitative or technical information expressed into text into a visual form. So maybe they read some information and they have to create a table or a chart or a figure using Excel or some other, or just making it on paper. So these are other ways that we use information and translate it and understand that into a visual format. We can also look at the writing standards that are very similar, looking at text types and purpose. So maybe your students need to, might want to write something, or you might have to have your students write something such as an opinion piece or whatever. For the purpose of this assignment, you are asked not to have your students write an essay or paper, but that is something you could use in your content area to address literacy standards as well. Again, you can access the link to the literacy standards in the comments below or in the description of this video. As a final reminder, here's the timeline for your performance/authentic assessment. You've already been introduced to the project. You should have a general idea of what you're going to have your students do for their performance/authentic assessment, and you're going to learn about rubrics. And remember, when you create your rubric, you should be measuring your student success both in the content area and on the literacy standard, their ability to speak, listen, or create. You should also have your standard chosen and your task refined by Module 4. You will get feedback if you haven't done so already. And then in Module 8, we'll do peer reviews, and then in Module 9, your final project is due. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can post them in the discussion forums, you can email the instructor, or ask your peers.